Hello and welcome to Unplugged, an IoT podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of industrial Internet of Things and automation. I'm your host, Phil Saboa.
G'day, Phil, and I'm Ed Fuentes. Today, we have a very special guest with us today. Both Phil and I, we're based in Australia, but our guest is in the UK. His name's Darren Anderson. He's a lecturer of industrial automation and mechatronics at the Southeastern Regional College.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So, Darren, you have over 14 years of industrial experience as an electrical maintenance engineer in the plastics and injection molding industry, and another 14 years in lecturing and delivering industrial training. Definitely can tell that you've got a deep passion about Industry 4 and IoT, and, you know, have been instrumental in these technologies in the education space for CERC, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
You show my age there. Well,
that's great.
Grey and a beard, you know.
Well, I guess to start off, can you tell us a bit about your journey of how you got into the field of automation and what led you to start teaching it?
Yeah, well, I served an apprenticeship as a electrical maintenance maintenance engineer in an injection molding company. I had been fault finding day to day in a production environment, and then I would say fault find on a machine, and it would fault find back all the wires, and it would get to one of those black boxes of voodoo magic, which was a PLC. So most electricians were like, "Oh, I don't want to touch that. Don't know what goes on inside that thing." So that kind of sparked my interest a bit. Then I remember there was one fault in particular where there was a thermocouple on a machine, and on the screen the temperature was bouncing up and down. So the machine beside it wasn't running. So I swapped over the two control cards, fixed the fault, and then I had the faulty card, which I noticed, the PCB, which I noticed there was two legs sticking out of it. The component had broken off. So I looked in the panel and there was a little can, looked like a capacitor. So I went and got a book. This was back before the internet days. Found a book, discovered that this device was a clock, a 10 megahertz clock. So I went to the electronics shop, bought one of these mystery devices, resoldered it in, put the card back into the other machine, and it worked. So that kind of sparked my interest into what is a clock, what does it do? So that kind of was the start of me becoming a nerd, even though I've been an electrical engineer for years. And that led me down the path to microcontrollers, pick chips, and learning how to code, I suppose, C programming, building circuits. So that kind of was my kind of journey, and that led me into PLCs then. So I kind of came into PLCs through the back door, and then that was me on the journey, I suppose. And then I brought that kind of mindset into my teaching. So through that, I went back to night class with the local college who I now work for, Southeastern Regional College, and did a higher national certificate. So that took me 3 years, 2 nights a week. About a year after that, then the college approached me, would I be interested in doing some part-time teaching? Which was a bit of a bizarre request because I was still an engineer on a shop floor, and someone asked me to teach. Me teach? What are you talking about? So I started doing it part-time for a good few months, maybe a year, and then a full-time post came up, and here I am, 15 years later. So kind of brought that learning curve with me, with the students.
Were they teaching like a broad range of things when you first joined them, or what were they kind of teaching at that point?
They were teaching PLCs, that kind of thing, and microcontrollers were just on the curriculum. So when I started teaching, took over the PLCs, I sort of introduced a bit more analog input devices, that type of thing, and brought that on board. Made it a bit more sort of industrial, and then pushed on the microcontrollers. So I started using pick chips, and then I remember Arduino first came out, and like most people, I was a bit hesitant. It's a bit of a toy, but now we just use Arduino because it's such a great platform. It's so easy. There's so many devices. Because it's open source, I suppose.
I guess it makes it super accessible, right, for most engineers, and that's probably the hardest, I guess, point from an educational point of view is resourcing as well.
Absolutely. And then I think also the Arduino platform, because it's kind of based on C programming effectively. That's the journey I came through myself. So I understand the benefit of learning how to code a bit. If you can read a bit of C programming, that kind of branches out everywhere. If you're in PLCs and you start learning how to use structured text programming, it's so easy to learn it on an Arduino with an LED and a servo motor or something. It's so easy to pick up those skills at home even.
It's amazing, Darren, the journey that I suppose you've been on, from the early days working as an engineer and playing with, those black boxes, whatever they were in those days, and the methodology required to program, the cost as well. That's something that really surprises me, how the cost of those sort of boxes in those days, what today's Arduinos or microprocessor boards come out with, just enable you to, with a bit of skill set, like you said, outside learning in your own time, or in your case, you went to a course. Today, there are courses all over the place. And I find that journey, I suppose, from your point of view, where you've played with these sort of more classical devices up into Arduinos, that in the past, you have a thermocouple connected to them, but now with an Arduino, you can do so much more, right? You can connect to so many other applications, bring data from everywhere. Is that the journey you've been on?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, right from bare bones, playing around with microcontrollers and things like that, then the early days, talking maybe 20 years ago, there was maybe like radio frequency devices you could have got, like radio signals, sending back and forward. So I remember playing around with that, and it was such a nightmare to get things to work. And then nowadays, I remember like Bluetooth came out for Arduinos, and that was a whole new thing, and it was just so easy to connect things and move like a servo motor from your phone, from an app. I remember doing that in the college here with the students, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. So you kind of always remember where the technology came from.
That's right. And this is advancing. So when was the first time, and do you remember the first time you heard the phrase IoT?
IoT.
When was the first time you heard that, and why did you hear it?
The first time, I think, probably before that would have been in 2016. I was in Berlin. We were doing a college here. We also deliver a Siemens certification course through Berlin and Germany. But I remember being on a certification course in the Siemens Academy in Berlin, their headquarters, and a mural on the wall. It was a big cloud, and right in the middle of it was Industry 4 with an IE and all these devices on. But I remember walking past it going, what's that mean, Industry 4? And I remember then, previous to that, I had been reading books and stuff about the Internet of Things and smart devices and all that kind of things. And in those days, it was called devices, they sent chirps. Did you ever hear that one, Ed? Or devices chirped to each other. It was sent packets of chirps. But anyway, that kind of coupled together Industry 4 and IoT. So I remember coming back home and starting to look into Industry 4. What's this all about in the early days, And again, see how far it's come now. It's pretty fascinating.
Is that where you sort of went to the college and then said, look, I think we're going to teach our students these things now. We're going to move into Industry 4. Was that part of you developing a curriculum or training in that space?
Probably in the back of my head way back then, yeah, it probably was, because it sort of knew if it's in Siemens headquarters, Industry 4, this is going to become a thing. I knew it would grow. So I've always been kind of learning in the background through that, And then I think, the same as you guys, I think then it was during lockdown for us. It was when I came across Walker Reynolds' first rant on the whiteboard of the ecosystem. I think most of us see that, and then that's the hook, and then off you go.
Are your students seeing kind of the benefits of these training mechanisms, these ideas? What do they think about it?
Yeah, it's the funny thing is with students, it's they kind of, for maybe 5 or 6 years, I've had a bit of a presentation always throughout at the start of the year, and I've always meaning to voice over it and put it on LinkedIn, which I eventually will. But the first slide is basically the Internet of Things, and I sort of throw it out to the class. The class could be 16 to 20-year-olds. Have anybody heard of the Internet of Things? And a tumbleweed just blows across the room. It always fascinates me, because my next question is, does anybody have a smartwatch? And they all put their hands up. Does anybody have Alexa? Hands up. Smart doorbell? Yeah. Smart light bulbs? Yeah. And I'm just like, Why? They just, it's a totally different generation.
Yeah.
These things just work.
They grew up with it, right? They've grown up with it, and it's not like this industry changing for them.
Yeah.
It is the industry that they're in, right?
And then in the background, once you start sort of introducing how these things work and they communicate at a high level, if you know what I mean, you do see a few light bulbs going off with students that are interested. I think the key is to get them interested. Like us, if you're not interested in it, you're not going to follow it,
Well, it's like you, when that card broke, that card broke, you were interested in working out how to fix it. It's that spark, right, that you need to go, how does this work? How do I apply it? How do I make it fit into what I do every day? And that's the challenge. I mean, Phil and I, we're both, well, we're not teachers educating people, but we feel like in a way we're educating our customers, the industry, around industry for. And you're right, it just needs that person to go, I sort of start getting that. In your classes, the IoT platforms that you play with, how do you use it? Is it hands-on experience? Is it how do you get that connection between what you understand to be IoT and how you put into in your curriculum? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a few students over the last year or two, maybe, because it's still early days with all of this. There's a couple of students, second year HND students, who are doing their final project. They'll have to design something, and so we try to align them with industry as much as we can. So there's 2 or 3 who have been using Arduino through their courses. We've introduced them to Motorrad, which is open source. Yeah. You can use it at home and connect in maybe a sensor or even just a push button on an Arduino into Motorrad, and then show them how to build a dashboard. Once the students see a dashboard that they can create, then if they're halfway interested, that's them done. Because then yourself, it's push a button and a light comes on the dashboard.
Yeah.
Like, can I get it to flash? And then if I push this button, can I say hello? Or what if I put a sensor on? And then they're away. They're halfway there. Kind of what's the spark, Ed, as you say, has been lit.
Yeah, fair enough. They need to see something move.
Yeah, and then they're doomed. Like you guys were saying, it's just you're lying in bed at night with ideas going, bing, how can I do this? How can I do that?
So you're seeing them, I guess, take that home potentially with their, in their development as well.
Some of them, I'm saying some of them, it's the ones who would be really interested in it. You get the spark that in them would be playing with this stuff at home. Again, because it's open source, you can buy an Arduino off Amazon for, I don't know what, £9, $15 or it would be. Software's free, Node-RED, it's free.
Delivered.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's even an interesting thing. We're talking about Amazon. We try and spark their interest when we're talking about the Internet of Things. Discuss, has anybody ordered anything off Amazon recently? And all the hands go up. Let's talk about that journey. You've ordered it. Your device has told you. There's a map pops up when the van arrives. Bang. It's all just that ecosystem. And you do see them going, oh yeah, I never thought about that before, how these things communicate and kind of the world that they live in.
It is amazing. So we're seeing, I guess, the adoption of, these protocols like MQTT, right? Like being, rolled out in various different IoT applications, right? So, the Netflix, the Facebook Messenger, these global giants in software, really leveraging, that industrial protocol, because originally it was an industrial protocol developed for industry. And so, having that adoption even in the IT world gives them some interest. If you start telling them some of these big names in the Facebooks of the world are using these technologies, they start to spark more interest in those platforms. And if they can utilize it, like in Node-RED, we've got plenty of nodes out there that are community driven, built for learning, really, to spark that next wave, that next generation of manufacturers, of asset managers, of production floor workers, right? Like just having that knowledge ingrained is pretty exciting stuff.
Just getting to that. Another one I would sort of talk to the students about is Tesla. Walker Reynolds all the time uses Tesla, and sort of how that works. And you see the students saying again, the light bulb's going off. Wow, that's amazing. And then as you're sort of saying there, Phil, once you spark that interest, they'll go and watch YouTube videos themselves. Yeah, so for me, the teaching part of it, I'm sort of introducing them, I'm sort of facilitating, or pointing them in the right direction with that bit of interest. And like us, the journeys we've been on, you teach yourself.
Yeah, that self-motivation, right?
Yeah, you learn it yourself if you're interested. So
how's the college then backed you in the way to deliver these? How have they seen this as an opportunity to reach, new students, potentially bringing them into the college, preparing them for industry? How are they seeing these courses being kind of be part of the delivery?
Well, it's over the last lot of years, I suppose, say, I don't know, since 2016, 17, I suppose when Industry 4 really took off, when the hype took off, I suppose, during lockdown, it was really for us. I've been following it, playing around with it like yourselves, building little ecosystems and learning it myself, then boring my colleagues about it. My family members really see this and you see that and they're like, oh, here he goes again about MQTT. What is this man talking about? Then slowly local industry, you can hear them sort of discussing it and talking about Industry 4. So through that, those sort of journeys, and then more colleagues have got on board with it, to the point where last year we developed this course, the foundation degree in Industry 4. So it was validated through the Open University. So it's sparked quite a bit of interest at the minute because, again, I can see it goes live in September. So hopefully we get enough students on board to run it. So it's open to students who are 18 and it's open to all ages. So we've said, it's advertised that even a local company could bring in, say, one of their personnel who could be a quality engineer, would benefit them to do the course. So it's interesting to see over the last year even, local companies that I would deal with are now have started their digital transformation journey. So it's interesting to see the rubber is now starting to hit the road. So even now with our students coming through over the next couple of years, we still want to teach those bread and butter skills of mechatronics, reading diagrams, building circuits, all that kind of stuff, but plant the seeds for Industry 4. So then those apprentices will go out into industry and the ideas come from the shop floor rather than, a senior manager being interested in Industry 4. The ideas are coming from the engineers themselves eventually, so they're coming along with those ideas of getting data, I suppose, is the key to it all, isn't it?
Are you finding it with the other educational institutions? Are they going down a similar realm, and have you created some sort of collaborative approach towards it, or do you have some unification through the? Yeah, okay, fantastic. How's that working?
Yeah, so there's in Northern Ireland there's six colleges. So Southeastern Regional College, we have 4 campuses. The other colleges have their own campuses, but we work together in a hub. So the last couple of years, there's groups of lecturing teams from each college that get together. So a couple of years ago, there was an Industry 4 hub. This year, there's a mechatronic hub. So there's lots of hubs. So to try and, over time, it doesn't matter then, a student goes to a college in the north of the country, and the college comes to us in the south. The content's all the same. It's aligning all that knowledge, I suppose, is the idea.
Is it? I guess all the content is trying to be driven by local businesses, or are you engaging with local businesses to maybe engage them as they progress through the courses?
So another good thing that's happening in the UK and in Northern Ireland is obviously the skills gap is a big issue across the world. But over the last 2 years, we have noticed apprenticeships are now a big thing. our numbers for apprenticeships are starting to go through the roof because industries needs the skills gap addressed, which is absolutely great, because then we're going back to how it should be, in my mind, apprenticeships. You know, students are told, go to university, go to university, go to university, leave university, don't have any skills, huge amount of debt, or if they come to the college, they can learn while they earn, and they're starting in their apprenticeship, become an engineer, and they already have those skills. You know, so it's good to see. And the interesting point is that it's not the parents are pushing the students to want to do an apprenticeship. It's the students are coming in and saying, I want to do an apprenticeship. You know, so the students see the benefit of doing an apprenticeship rather than going to university. So finally,
what's the influence there? Why are they becoming so self-driven to become, you know, an apprentice?
I think for the students, it's the fact that they can earn. So I mean, I would explain it to parents. A kid could leave school, go to university for 4 years, get 4 years doing their degree, maybe let's say £40,000 worth of debt, no real hands-on skills, then go to a company as an engineer, but then that company has to train them the hands-on skills. Whereas if they do an apprenticeship at a college, even if it's 1 day a week, earning while they learn, so say it's after 4 years of an apprenticeship, they could start as an engineer and their salary would be £40,000 a year, and they don't have any debt. Plus they have 4 years of skills to build on. So I think the students are starting to clock, they won't have that debt. And then once they have their apprenticeship behind them, then the old saying is, the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
You know, if you go down to Australia, take those skills with them to Australia, for example.
Well, that's exactly my history, right? So I was an electrical apprentice in London. I did, you know, I went through my apprenticeship and became an electrician, and then moved to Australia for a bit of a holiday and never left, basically. So I can definitely, talk to that college experience as well, going through that apprenticeship, having that balance between, you know, working on the tools in everyday life, you know, whether it be chasing cables through roofs or, installing switchboards or those types of activities, really getting those hands-on skills, and then being able to come into the college environment, learn some of the technicalities about what I'm supposed to be doing in my everyday day job, basically, and having those mentors within that apprenticeship scheme, that being the electrician on site and leading the way on those things. It's hugely valuable for the young people to be able to just go through that as well.
We've seen here as well, especially through the similar college environments where the government has provided funding for specific courses that benefit, like you mentioned, the skills gaps that we see occurring in industry. Are you finding the same? Are those courses also government funded or government sponsored or industry sponsored?
Yes.
Is that how it works there as well?
Yep, some of them will be funded. Yeah. I mean, when I left school in 1994, where it was, here in the UK, there were government training centres. I remember left school, I'm at a training centre doing electrical engineering for a year, but the training centre, you were just in an industrial environment. It was just purely hands-on, and there was 1 day theory, you know, and then a few years after I had served my time, then across the UK, they closed down the training centres. And that was for all the trades. It was for electrical, bricklaying, painting and decorating, car mechanics, all those trades kind of lost out. I remember thinking at that time that's going to be a skills gap, and then 20 years later, well, more than that, because those skills were just killed off. Journeymen and women retired or went up into senior management or came into teaching, and that knowledge transfer was just gone. So it's a bit of an issue.
I mean, here in Australia, we're seeing some, I guess, more focus on re-onshoring, manufacturing, and so that skills gap is kind of now a focus for most, educational centres, to try and bridge the gap and bring in the new engineers. We're seeing, even through our interactions, the system integrators of the world trying to find skilled, new trades as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that we're all kind of attributing to or trying to contribute to in our way as well. So it's really great to see you guys developing those courses to reflect the demand.
Demand is huge because, as you mentioned, when at the beginning of your career, when you're working and those PLC boxes, they typically go and spend a lot of money just to go. I think Phil talks about, get into Industry 4 via Industry 3. So the idea of automation. And many started 20 years ago by automating their factories, by putting PLCs and smarter devices, playing around with networks, and they never invested anymore. They just got stuck there. And now, some of them, a lot of them now, are looking at how we've got this legacy hardware, this legacy system. And they're struggling to move into the new Industry 4 because they're using legacy protocols. They don't have all the data, or they've got bandwidth issues around the protocols they're consuming, or they can't scale properly. So these are the skills that I think the industry is looking for. And Phil and I, we've talked about this, that there's this gap in that knowledge that is from, okay, we've got the PLC and automation guys. How do businesses move from this legacy, what seems to be a legacy platform, not so much replace or rip it out, but how do we sit on top of it and what we call an IoT platform these days? That's what we refer to it, and that seems to be where the skills is required, and I know there's a hunger in industry for that knowledge, especially here as well. So it's great to see education centres like yours teaching that.
I think even dialing those skills back, even because whenever I was an apprentice, I grew up, to call it that, on machines that didn't have PLCs in them. The machines were from the 70s. We opened the panel and it was just relay logic or just big electronic logic cards, which is pure logic. So learning how to read those circuit diagrams and fault find just on wires, so those skills, because I would sort of think that it doesn't matter how advanced Industry 4 might become with these amazing dashboards and AI running in the background, if a chart stops giving you data and you've nobody there with the skills to go down and open a panel and fault find on pure relay logic, what's the point in having the fancy dashboard? If those skills, what I would call bread and butter skills, because it might be a really old legacy machine that the company doesn't want to replace because they can't replace it because they can't get that machine anymore, and it just runs on pure relay logic. Yes, you can maybe gather data out of it and attach smart sensors, but you still need those bread and butter skills. Without those Industry 3 skills, let's call it, Industry 4 falls on its ass very quickly.
Especially from the maintenance point of view, right?
Yeah.
If you're absolutely right. So everyone's kind of focused on, downtime tracking and OEE type metrics. And if you don't have the skill set to be able to try and negate those downtime events, you're really going to be in struggle. You're going to be chasing your tail, right? And that's one of our biggest challenges here is how do we transfer that inbuilt legacy knowledge to the next person on the rank, right? On the next cab on the rank. So it's really going to be a challenge. And having this institutional knowledge and these educational bodies teaching the Industry 4 skill sets, the Industry 3 skill sets to then pass on to Industry 4 knowledge is really critical in that thought process.
Yeah, definitely is.
With all the things you've done, Darren, from training in the education institutions, I imagine meeting different businesses, I imagine going to different companies. What are some of the, the weirdest questions you got asked at school from your students, what are some? You got any stories you can share that what you've seen in industry or even in class that you've experienced? That would be quite a interesting anecdote.
I think I wrote a few down earlier on. I think that time I was in Berlin. So we went in 2016, myself and a couple of colleagues for this certification course, which is a Siemens mechatronics certification program. It's another course we deliver in the college. So we were in Berlin and we had got tickets. I think it was the following year because we went twice. We went to the BMW Motorrad, where they make BMW motorbikes. So we got paid for a tour for that, which was kind of coming in. I'm not into motorbikes in any way, but what fascinated me was that was the first time I'd seen AGVs, automated guided vehicles, around the factory. The other thing that fascinated me was how lean the factory was. To the point where the production line was a mezzanine floor above us with the bikes coming around, and then they come down onto the shop floor through each cell where the operators were putting the bits and bobs on the bike. Meanwhile, the AGVs were going past. The tour guide, as the bikes were going past, she was just reaching over and lifting a ticket off the bike and going, oh, this one's going to Australia. Joe Bloggs, putting the ticket back on, and the bike might have had a certain colour of leather, certain handlebars, certain tyres, a certain colour. And then the next bike would come along, completely different bike, and she would lift the ticket off. Oh, this one's going to Cork in Ireland. It just fascinated me how each bike was completely bespoke. And we were moving along and everything was just so lean and so slick. And then walking around to the production floor and the tool room, I suppose, where there were the very large turning and milling machines and all that kind of stuff. And there was how few engineers there were on the floor. It was just all automated with robots. You know, that's the first sort of, and that to my mind then as well, during that time was when I had seen the Industry 4 mural on the wall. I was like, okay, I see where this is going, you know. And also locally here we have an aircraft manufacturer, Spirit AeroSystems, used to be Bombardier. So I deal with the company that does the automation up there, and a few years ago being up there and seeing again the large AGVs, huge big dollies, but they were transporting the wing sections because they make the resin filled wings, and these huge wings being transported along by a mobile robot along the shop floor was kind of cool. But one that I had noted down a few weeks ago was in Coca-Cola. So we have a Coca-Cola factory here, and was up promoting the course to the production manager and the maintenance manager. So they recently have installed, I cannot remember the name of the software, but it's their Industry 4 software, let's call it, where they can create dashboards. So this has been rolled out. The guys have been told, just play with this, get your head around it. It's all hooked up to all the sensors so they can pull out data. So the production manager was telling me a couple of days before this, and he brought up on his screen was a chart, and it was a door sensor on one of the machines. And he sort of pointed out that you could see the door was open for 3 minutes, and it was closed again, and it was open for 5 minutes, open for 10 minutes. So he sort of thought, well, why is that door open? It's an automated machine. It doesn't. So that prompted him to get out of his seat and go down onto the shop floor, speak to the operator. Why is this door open? He says, I'm not going off, I'm just curious. And the operator had said that the pallet of material, the cardboard, is damp. So whenever it goes into the machine, it's sticking. So I have to open the door, get the cardboard back out, and then close it. So that was only a few weeks ago, and I thought, wow, there's Industry 4 data. There's an issue that never probably would have been resolved. That just would have been a bun fight between the operator and the storeman. You know, so it's just from a door switch.
It's funny how the smallest amount of data can have a massive impact, right? And, you know, that person operating that machine would have just been living with that for a while, right? For I don't know, until we got bored of it, right?
Yeah, 100%. That sort of brings on then what if I'm doing training or my students, I always try to instill in them the most important person to ask if you're fault finding on a machine in production is the operator. Go and talk to the person who stands beside the machine. 12 hours a day, they know all the sounds and the smells, and the vibrations. Go and speak to them. Now, usually sometimes it'll end up in an argument because you'll ask the operator, "What did you do?" And the operator, "I didn't do anything. I didn't touch anything. It wasn't my fault." You know, but it's just that those little bits of experiences, I suppose, we all try to pass on to the students.
As we said, is that institutional knowledge, right? It's where to tap, where to speed up, where to slow down. You know, where does that piece of cardboard always get stuck on the conveyor, right? Yeah. Like these guys know these machines inside and out, and all those small pieces of data. that, you know, AI is probably going to pick up in the future, but not right now. Right? They're going to be able to give you that really low hanging fruit for a business. They have all the key metrics that you need to keep that downtime event from happening.
Yeah, I mean, you could be chasing your tail trying to fault find the machine, whatever it might be, and the operator turns around and hits a hydraulic valve at the top with a hammer, and off it goes. And like, what'd you do? Oh, that's worked for the last 10 years. You know, you'd never find that. You know,
you never know. It's amazing. The right data in the hands of the right person at the right time. All 100%. Of a sudden, you know, it does, as Phil mentioned, it creates that ability to fault find a problem. In your days, it was looking, you know, you mentioned that car that broke off and the little pins missing, you know, that data for you was important. And, you know, so it's, how do you know, with the industry, you know, Phil and I would talk about how Australia's going from a digital transformation perspective in manufacturers. How's it going in your area? Are they adopting? Are they moving ahead in industry for? How do you see it? What's going on?
I could say in the last 6 months, 6 months to a year. I mean, the company I used to work for, General Plastics, they're starting their digital transformation journey. Coca-Cola, there's another few companies here that are starting to, I know 2, 3 of them actually are starting to or have installed ignition. I know one, for example, has switched all their SCADA on one site over to ignition and starting to dip their toe then in MQTT. So the rubber is definitely hitting the road. And I think then what then seems to happen is one manufacturer does it and then their competitor hears about it and then, we need to start doing that. And then off you go.
That's good.
But it definitely is starting to happen finally. Yeah.
Definitely neighbors looking over the fences, right? Trying to find out what's the competitive edge, who's going to take the first leap. Do they want to be the first in the industry to take that leap, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely a bit of a snowball effect when it comes to manufacturers or even energy providers, you know, pretty much. Or if you're in a competitive space, which most of us are, you're definitely going to be looking at the industry for trends and try and pick up on the latest and greatest as well.
I think also you guys will have noticed this more than me is recently, locally here anyway, you can start to have conversations with people because before you'd be preaching or rambling on about IIoT, you'd be talking, you know, MQTT and all the buzzwords, and people with their eyes would glaze over and the screensaver would come up. What is this guy talking about? But now I'm having more conversations with people about it.
Right.
You know, people are on the seat. People have now got their head around the ecosystem, and now we're talking about it. You know, rather than me just rambling on about it, which is a good sign as well that they're some of these other companies are on their journey. You know, their learning curve.
I guess. So I'm a bit of an advocate for self-learning, self-teaching, and I've kind of invested some of my time in my own kind of personal development in home automation. I guess, is that something that you've been doing in your own time as well?
Yeah, not to the dizzying heights that you have your house automated, I have to say. But so a couple of sensors around the house. But again, that was kind of, I needed a way. Well, another thing, it takes a while for anyone to get your head around the Industry 4 IoT ecosystem in your head. What is this unified namespace and how does all that work? So it takes you a while to get that right in your own head, I think. Watching videos, following guys like yourselves. And then I was at that point where I was ready to do something. But I think then my first mistake was I just went and downloaded Ignition a couple of years ago. Got it up and working. And I think I connected a PLC to it. And then it was like, right, MQTT. And then my wheels fell off because I hadn't clue what I was doing. And I tried something else and it just turned into a mess. So then I just thought, right, let's dial back, get a PLC, OPC-UA, get that working, the Node-RED, and then try everything else. So at that point then I realized I needed to have some sort of live data. So that's when I bought a few Zigbee sensors. So I have about 8 of those around the house, connected to a Raspberry Pi, which is running Node-RED. So I'm using it as my edge device. So the first step was getting that working. I think I downloaded an app to my phone so I could see the data from Node-RED. Then my next step was I wanted to get that from my house, from my edge device to the cloud. So that was my step for HiveMQ. Then once I could see it in the broker, then right, next step, I'll use FlowFuse in the cloud, Node-RED in the cloud, get the data into there, normalize it. And then from there, my next step was, right, I think I'm ready now to have a go at a historian, which was Influx. So got into Influx, and then from there into Grafana. But I think like most things, when you're trying to learn something, you guys are probably the same. My goal, I think, was to get data to Grafana in the cloud. I think that was my goal. Get it sort of get to Grafana using these protocols and then get my head around it. But I think the problem seems to be with most things with software, even PLC programming, you'll get it working, say a dashboard in Grafana, and it's wonderful. And you don't look at those steps again until something goes wrong. And it could be months later. And then you're like, oh, how did I do that? How did I connect that sensor? How did I do that?
What does that code do?
Yeah. You just keep repeating until it sticks, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise you're back on Google again. Where was that thread? Yeah, so I have that rolling at home, just as live data going in and out, which was my learning curve, I suppose, at home. And then Phil, you've taken that to another level. You're sort of controlling your house, really. I'm just reading data, I suppose, temperature and door sensors, but you're controlling things in the house as well, I suppose, which is that next step.
Yeah, I guess like if you're on that journey is it's the same with Industry 4, right? You have to understand the why. Like why do you want to do this, right? Why do you want to have the data at your fingertips? Why do you want to, you might have your own reasons, right? You might have, I want to reduce my energy usage. I want to see how temperature is impacting how I, use my house. Maybe there's colder areas in the house than others. I guess understanding the why is even more important than the journey to get there.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
But like the journey is what's really exciting. You mentioned, right, connecting those sensors up as well, learning on the fly, finding out what challenges there might be, right? You've got a Zigbee sensor there talking to Node-RED. How are you going to get those to communicate, right? Zigbee doesn't natively talk to Node-RED, right? So you need a Zigbee to MQTT converter potentially, right? And those types of challenges, really exist.
Those little learn it, and then we all do it. You're going into Google, and then you find a thread and you go, let's try that. And then off you go and you watch a video, you get that bit working, and then you kind of, even at the same time, I was, we moved house a couple of years ago, so I'm converting the attic into a bedroom. So I put a sensor in the attic because I needed to put insulation in the rafters. Sounds very boring, but it was interesting to see on the data, the humidity drop in the roof space as I was putting in because I was doing it over the winter, and you could see on the trend that the humidity dropping and the temperature going up over time, which was quite interesting.
That's going to give you your ROI, right? Yeah, your return on investment on that better.
So right? It's even then things like that. You're kind of going, well, there's like IoT in the building trade, building a new house, install sensors.
There's such a joy, isn't it? There's such satisfaction when you get out those little cheap sensor. I something similar. I put level sensors, little ultrasonic sensors that cost me, I think $1.80 to a little Arduino, pushing MQTT on a Wi-Fi to my router. I've got a mosquito sitting on a Raspberry Pi, feeding into a cloud instance, and I was sitting on a train. I could turn my pump on and off on my train, back into my house. But it's so satisfying, right? There is a way, but I think we're constantly learning. That's what we want to do. I think
you have to be.
It's why we're here, right? It's why I love Industry 4. There's no one way of doing something, isn't it? There's so many different ways, and each way is a learning journey. But to Phil's point, it's the why that drives us, and if it's learning, if it's a ROI on achieving better efficiency, if it's educating your students like you're doing now, right? Everything you do and learn, you're just going to teach it again and pass it on to the next generation.
It kind of rolls it back to that analogy, can't remember the name of it, but it's strategy, the right people, and those people then need to know the process before you even buy any technology.
Mm-hmm. Get the right partners on board.
Typically it's, let's just buy the biggest, fanciest robot we can get and put it onto the machine that's making crap. All you're doing is making more crap faster.
More crap.
That's right. I know.
Yeah.
Phil and I, we're constantly learning. We're on a learning curve. So you've learned a lot already. So what's the next things you're looking at learning? Where are you going in your learning curve?
Good one. For me, I think at the stage where I think I'm going to properly drill into ignition, because I've now got data, I've got all the other stuff. Start playing around with ignition. Again, I'll do it myself at home and build it up and then introduce it to the students. But I think ignition, but also quite high on the list, and it has been for many years, is properly learning Python coding. I think is key. So I think that's definitely on the list, and then maybe SQL, maybe properly learning to create databases and stuff. Yeah, I think Python. I think the problem with, for example, a few years ago, it was during lockdown, my family bought me a 3D printer. I think you have one as well. And I had tried to learn CAD.
Yeah.
There it is. I had tried to learn CAD many times, and it just bored me because I was just drawing shapes and going, this is boring, until I had a 3D printer. And then I was making stuff. So I was like, let's draw a square, printed it out. Oh, and then off you go. So I think the same thing is true when I come to learn or try to learn Python properly. I think I need to come up with a project and have a Arduino doing something, and then learn the code so the Python's actually doing something, making something move is usually how it works in my head, and then I can transfer that knowledge to writing a script to do something.
Like the blinking light you mentioned during the talk today. When I see the light, I got lit.
That's always the hook, isn't it?
That's right.
Oh, it's flashing, and then off you go. Yeah, on the Google.
That's the why. That's the why. That's the spark, right? Is that we want to, your students want to see something, that they've achieved at the end of it, and that's the why to get to where you want to go to, right? Is actually that learning journey, and as you said, if you don't have a strong enough why, you will fall off the rails, unfortunately. So you have to really make sure that you're really motivated to do it. I've been on that journey as well, learning Python, learning SQL, and it's something that I did as part of learning ignition, right? As well, and so that was. I'm no expert in it, but I'm definitely can at least understand it enough to be able to apply it.
I think that's the key. Nobody is an expert. It's kind of, you just know enough to get by. Do you know what I mean?
You're always learning. You're always learning. So even professional, system integrators who are doing it day in, day out, there's different techniques, different strategies, best practices. We're always learning these different aspects.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The word expert's a bit kind of, because you're always learning.
It's a moving goalpost.
Every day's a school day.
Every day is a school day.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because the generation now of students have a totally different mindset to us. I think it's trying to get them to use their mind's eye again. Kids now, their phone is their imagination in a way. So it's trying to get them what's the word? The joy of building something and seeing it work. And you built it yourself, as you were saying, Phil. It's getting them that first wee appreciation, and then you just want to do it more and more, don't you? I suppose it's every day's a school day.
Yeah, and look, and having that social environment, right, as well. There's something to be said by having that college environment where you're working alongside other students to achieve the same goals, right, at the end of the day. And there's that camaraderie, there's the in and out, type approach where we're trying to solve the problem. And I think, even during COVID, those times, you might have I don't know, did your college like adapt to that situation and do online courses, or did you have, how did you struggle through that?
That was tough. I think I remember a Friday from memory. We were just told, right, go home. We're in lockdown. And I remember then driving home on the Friday and getting the email to say on the following Monday, you're just teaching from home. So I remember sitting and other colleagues in the automation team kind of going, how the hell am I going to teach PLCs and embedded systems from home? It's like, how's that going to happen? So I think I had at the time with PLCs at home, obviously. So we were just shooting videos and presentations, but I had, factory IO software. So I had it installed. So I remember just doing videos and using it for the students. So it was pretty tough. And it was during that time, I think, the learning curve really started into IIoT because I was at home. I had the time to sit and learn all this stuff. And then I think the world at that time went crazy for webinars. So we were going to all the webinars and meeting people and talking to people. And yeah, so that's kind of where I sort of really started my journey, I suppose, in the IoT, learning the stuff,
Look, I think as we wrap up the podcast for today, look, it's really great to see, so someone so passionate in education around these IoT and industry for topics, and it's really been great chatting to you, Darren, about those.
It's really great to see you two preaching as well and spreading the word.
Thanks, Darren. No, it's really, for us, it's quite, it actually encourages us because, the more we talk to people like-minded, like yourself, about the passion you have, it just keeps us going in that same journey. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys. I think you do kind of become a industry for evangelist, really, don't you? Because you're just
absolutely. If people want to follow you, Darren, what's the best way?
Just probably on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn?
Probably.
Okay, perfect.
Obvious way, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll have all your links in the show notes. And as we wrap up, and don't forget to subscribe to the Unplugged and IoT podcast for more episodes with industry leaders and innovators. Look, thanks for tuning in, guys.